People are experts at pretending. They wear masks made of charm, intellect, confidence, and fear. They speak in ways that invite approval and avoid rejection. They show the world only what the world can accept. To truly see someone means seeing through that without tearing it apart, without judgment, without superiority. It's not about exposing their disguise, but recognizing the pain that required it. Most people are performing roles they never consciously auditioned for. They are what their childhoods demanded them to be, what their fears allowed them to become. If you look closely, you'll see that everyone is a mosaic of what they've had to survive. Seeing that doesn't make you wiser, it makes you compassionate. Because once you see the machinery behind the mask, anger dissolves, judgment weakens, and something quieter takes its place, understanding. To see people clearly, one must first unsee. Unsee the categories. Unsee the need to fix. Unsee the part of yourself that constantly compares and measures. Seeing is not an act of control, but of surrender. The mind wants to analyze, to dissect, to name. It wants to say, this person is kind, that one is toxic. This one is successful, that one is lost. But the truth of a human being never fits cleanly into language. The truth of a person is movement, contradiction, and paradox. It shifts from moment to moment, just like you do. When you begin to realize that everyone is a process rather than a fixed identity, your relationships begin to change. You stop expecting permanence from impermanent creatures. You stop demanding coherence from beings who are still discovering who they are. You stop needing everyone to fit neatly into your idea of who they should be. And in that release, you start to see them as they are, unfinished, uncertain, alive. There is a quiet art to seeing people that most of the world has forgotten. Everyone looks, but few truly see. When one walks through the city streets, what passes for awareness is often a blur of faces, a haze of assumptions, labels, and judgments that have been repeated so many times. They feel like truth. But to see someone as they are, beneath their surface, beyond the social mask that requires consciousness, it is not a matter of effort, but of presence. Alan once said that the moment you stop trying to understand a person and simply let them be, the truth of them begins to reveal itself, because in that stillness, the projections fall away. You stop seeing your reflection in them, and instead you begin to perceive what is actually there. This is the first step in truly seeing people, to notice how rarely we do, to understand that most of what we call connection is nothing more than mutual illusion. The tragedy of modern society is that most people are not looking at each other. They're looking for each other, searching for mirrors that reflect their desired image back at them. Relationships become agreements of mutual blindness. I won't see your shadow if you don't see mine. But when someone truly sees you, it can be unsettling. You feel naked, exposed, yet deeply recognized. That's why most people avoid true intimacy. It dismantles their persona. To be seen is to be known, and to be known is to lose the illusion of control. Yet in that vulnerability lies freedom. When someone looks at you without projection, without demand, without fear, they awaken something ancient inside you, the memory of what it felt like to simply be, to exist without needing to perform for love or approval. That is the gift of being seen. It heals what years of validation could never touch. Every human being is broadcasting signals, tiny flashes of their true self that slip past their persona. A nervous laugh, a pause before answering, the way someone looks away when asked about love or purpose or pain. Most of these signals go unnoticed, drowned by noise and hurry. But if you slow down, if you actually listen, people tell you everything. They tell you their fears, their longing, their stories of defeat, all without words. The truly conscious listener hears the silence between sentences. They see the truth that hides behind practiced smiles, and they respond not to the mask but to the soul. This kind of seeing creates a rare kind of peace, because when you no longer need someone to be different from who they are, when you no longer demand that they match your fantasy of them, something miraculous happens. Connection without control, love without condition, presence without pretense. There's an invisible loneliness that follows those who have begun to see deeply. Because once you start perceiving the inner world beneath people's words, you can never go back to casual conversation. Every laugh becomes layered, every compliment tinged with insecurity, every silence heavy with unspoken pain. It can be disorienting. You begin to notice how much of human interaction is ritual rather than real exchange. The polite smile, the polite lie, the polite avoidance of truth. But here's the paradox. The more awake you become, the less you judge the sleeping. You realize that unconsciousness isn't a crime, it's a stage. You once lived there too, unaware of your own masks. The difference now is that you can see both, the dream and the dreamer. You can play the game without forgetting it's a game. You can speak the language of illusion without being trapped by it. Seeing others begins with the courage to see yourself. Not the version you post online, not the version you defend in arguments, but the raw, contradictory, confused being underneath. The one who sometimes pretends to understand when they don't, the one who seeks attention while craving solitude, the one who feels both infinite and insignificant. When you see yourself fully, you begin to recognize yourself in everyone. Their insecurity is no longer foreign, it's familiar. Their fear is no longer frustrating, it's human. You realize that no one is separate from you. They're all fragments of the same mirror. To truly see people, you must abandon the illusion that you are looking at others. You are always, in some mysterious way, looking at another version of yourself. And the degree to which you understand them is the degree to which you've understood you. So perhaps the greatest act of seeing is not looking outward at all, but inward. Because the deeper you go within, the clearer the world becomes without. When you clear your own projections, you see people as they are, not as what you need them to be. When you heal your own shadow, you stop mistaking others for enemies. When you learn to sit with your own pain, you can sit peacefully with someone else's. And that, Alan would say, is what love truly is. The ability to be with what is without resistance, to see without distortion, to look upon another soul and say, I see you. Not the story, not the mask, not the armor, but you. That moment of recognition is rare, and when it happens, even for a second, the illusion of separateness dissolves. You realize that every person you've ever met is simply life itself, meeting itself again in 1,000 different disguises. And yet, to see people in this way is not a passive act. It's a practice, one that reshapes how you move through the world. It demands attention. In a culture addicted to distraction, you can't see clearly when you're scrolling endlessly, when your perception is fractured into 1,000 fleeting impressions. The mind that constantly judges, compares, and reacts is blind to reality. To see people truly, you must slow down enough to let them exist in your awareness without interruption. Watch how a person enters a room, how they occupy space, how their energy shifts when they speak of something they love versus something they fear. This isn't analysis, it's attunement. You're not dissecting their behavior, you're witnessing their being. When presence deepens, insight happens on its own. You begin to sense things you can't explain, the heaviness behind a smile, the defense in a laugh, the loneliness behind confidence. And once you've seen it, it's impossible to unsee. Seeing requires silence, not the silence of absence, but the silence of listening. Most conversations are battles for airtime, people waiting for their turn to speak rather than to understand. But the person who listens without agenda creates space for truth to emerge. The other feels it immediately. Something in them relaxes. They no longer have to perform, because they sense they're not being judged. This is the alchemy of awareness. What you observe with understanding begins to transform. When someone feels seen not for their role but for their essence, their mask begins to fall away naturally. That's the paradox. Change happens when you stop trying to change others. In seeing them as they are, you give them permission to return to themselves. But most people can't handle being seen for too long. It unsettles the persona they've built. When you look at someone without flinching, without playing along with their act, they'll either open or retreat. Some will smile nervously and shift the topic. Others will become defensive, making jokes or criticisms to re-establish distance. You must understand this and not take it personally. You're not meant to expose anyone. You're meant to remain aware that behind every defense is fear. And behind every fear is pain. The more awake you become, the gentler you grow, because you realize that everyone is protecting something sacred, some wound, some memory, some fragile belief that once kept them safe. To truly see someone is to honor that without needing to fix it. Compassion doesn't mean agreement, it means clarity without cruelty. The modern world teaches people to curate themselves, Every profile, every selfie, every opinion is another layer of performance. We've mistaken visibility for connection, exposure for intimacy, but being seen is not the same as being known. To be known, one must risk honesty. To be honest, one must stop performing. And to stop performing, one must trust that their unedited self is enough. This is why real seeing is rare. It dismantles illusion, and illusion is comfortable. But illusion also isolates. The more effort we spend crafting how we appear, the further we drift from who we are. Seeing someone truly is an act of rebellion against this age of fabrication. It's choosing depth over display, presence over performance, and reality over reputation. It's refusing to participate in the lie that masks are safer than authenticity. To see someone in their pain without rushing to heal them, that is maturity. To witness their confusion without giving advice, that is love. The awakened learn that understanding is more powerful than fixing, because the attempt to fix often comes from discomfort. We want others to be okay so we can feel safe. But true seeing doesn't demand resolution. It allows mystery. It allows contradiction. You can watch a friend oscillate between joy and despair, confidence and fear, and not lose faith in them, because you've learned that people are not their moods. They are vast fields of consciousness, temporarily clouded by weather. And when you relate to them from that awareness, you become an anchor rather than a rescuer. Presence itself becomes medicine. The more you see, the less you argue. The more you understand, the less you need to prove, because you begin to notice that most conflict arises from blindness. People fighting over projections, debating illusions, reacting to ghosts from their own past. When you see this clearly, you can no longer join the battle. Not out of apathy, but out of clarity. You can't take sides when you see that both are defending identities that don't exist. You become still in the storm, a quiet witness to humanity's endless play of shadows. This stillness isn't detachment, it's wisdom. You know the difference between noise and truth, and you no longer confuse them. Seeing others in their unconsciousness no longer makes you superior, it makes you patient. You stop trying to wake people up, you start simply embodying wakefulness. And perhaps that's the ultimate revelation of seeing. You realize that every person you meet is an opportunity to know yourself. The ones who anger you reveal your own wounds. The ones who inspire you mirror your hidden potential. The ones who ignore you test your need for validation. Each interaction becomes a mirror held up to consciousness. To see others clearly is to use them as portals into self-awareness. When you begin to live this way, every encounter becomes sacred. Even conflict becomes meaningful. Even silence becomes rich. You are no longer moving through a world of strangers. You're walking through a hall of mirrors, reflecting fragments of the same divine source. The illusion of separation fades, and what remains is awe. Because suddenly you're not just seeing people, you're seeing life, meeting itself again and again, disguised as them. And when you begin to see life in this way, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Every passerby on the street becomes a story in motion, a consciousness unfolding in time. You start to notice the small details that once seemed irrelevant. The way a stranger pauses before crossing the road, the slight hesitation that reveals a lifetime of caution, or the quiet smile exchanged between two people who still believe in kindness. These moments aren't random. They are subtle communications from existence itself, whispering reminders that the divine hides in plain sight. Seeing people truly means realizing that every soul you meet is an expression of the same universal intelligence wearing a temporary disguise. Behind every face is infinity, peering back through human eyes. To see that is to fall in love with everything, even the broken, even the difficult, even the lost. But such perception comes at a cost. Once you see this deeply, you can't participate in the shallow games anymore. You can't gossip or judge without feeling something in you recoil. You can't dehumanize the person you disagree with, because their eyes betray the same longing that lives in yours. Awareness dissolves the comfortable walls that ignorance built. It makes empathy unavoidable. And sometimes that empathy hurts. It stretches your heart wider than you thought possible. You feel the weight of humanity, the beauty and the suffering intertwined. Yet Alan would say that this pain is sacred. It's not a burden to carry, but a proof that you are awake. To see people is to feel them. To feel them is to remember that you're not separate from them. Compassion then is not a virtue, it's a natural consequence of perception. The art of seeing isn't about becoming mystical or enlightened, it's about becoming real. It's about standing in the truth of what is, without distortion. When you look at another human being and no longer project your desires or fears upon them, what's left is astonishingly simple. They are just there, breathing, alive, imperfect, divine. In that simplicity, everything false falls away. You stop trying to label people as good or bad, awake or asleep, worthy or unworthy. You stop dividing the world into categories that only the ego needs to feel secure. Instead, you begin to see patterns, cycles of behavior, echoes of pain, repetitions of longing, all playing out through countless lives. You see how every person is both a teacher and a lesson, both the mirror and the reflection. And in that seeing, life itself becomes your greatest classroom. But awareness without grounding can become isolation. When you see through illusions that others still live by, loneliness may visit. You'll sit in conversations that no longer feed you, scroll through noise that once entertained you, and feel a growing distance between your eyes and the world's performance. This isn't a tragedy, it's an initiation. The gap between awareness and belonging is temporary. It's the silence before integration. The awakened eye must first learn to observe without judgment before it can participate without illusion. That's what true maturity is. Not escaping society, but seeing through it. To walk among the asleep without needing to wake them, to love without needing to fix, to speak truth quietly and live it loudly. That's the balance of vision and grace. The seer doesn't retreat forever. They simply return differently. To truly see people, one must practice humility. Because the moment you think you've figured someone out, you've stopped seeing them. People are rivers, not statues. They change with every experience, every loss, every revelation. The person you knew yesterday is not the same one standing before you today. True seeing honors that fluidity. It greets people with curiosity instead of certainty. It understands that even those trapped in their own delusion are not wrong, they are learning. You can't rush their awakening any more than you can force a flower to bloom. You can only be sunlight, steady, patient, warm. And in that warmth, sometimes, their petals open on their own. This is how awareness spreads, not through preaching or persuasion, but through presence. Seeing becomes contagious when it's paired with love. If you could see the world through the eyes of consciousness itself, you'd see that no one is your enemy, no one is beneath you, and no one is above you. Everyone is fulfilling a role in this vast cosmic play. Some teach you through kindness, others teach you through conflict. Some enter to heal you, others arrive to challenge you. But each of them, whether pleasant or painful, reflects something in you waiting to be known. When you understand this, life stops feeling random. Every meeting, every heartbreak, every smile from a stranger becomes part of the same sacred choreography. Seeing people is no longer an effort. It's a revelation unfolding moment by moment. The world becomes transparent, and through every face you glimpse eternity. And so in the end, the art of truly seeing people is the art of awakening itself. Because the more clearly you see others, the more you realize there are no others. There is only consciousness, looking through different eyes, playing different roles, dreaming different dreams. To see someone completely is to dissolve the distance between you and them. It's to remember, in a flash of awareness, that you are both waves in the same vast ocean, briefly meeting at the crest before merging back into silence. And in that silence there is peace, not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of understanding, the kind that arises when you no longer need anyone to be anything other than what they already are. That is what it means to truly see people, not to look at them through the lens of what you want, but through the stillness of what is. Because when the eyes of consciousness open, seeing becomes love, and love becomes the vision itself,